20 Women in Exhibition Speaker Series, where we have the pleasure of interviewing Mike Polydorus from Paper Airplane. And our sponsor of today is Gianni from Ani Creative. And Gianni's going to take a few minutes to share a little bit about what her company does and how they support women in exhibition. So Gianni, without further ado, tell us about Ani Creative.
Thank you. So Ani Creative, there's a few of us on the call today. We're a full service creative agency that serves entertainment clients. One half of our business supports art and production design. So it's designing sets that you may see on film, TV, and commercials. The other side of our business supports the cinemas. So we work very closely with studios and primarily independent and small to mid-sized cinemas on enhancing guest experiences through long-term marketing and social media strategy, concessions and promotional products, and experiential design. We aim to guide, collaborate, and support small independent cinemas through digital marketing and creative efforts. And we really look to differentiate ourselves among other cinema marketing agencies by focusing solely on the needs of independent and small to mid-sized theater chains, which, as you all may know, their needs vary greatly from the larger exhibitors. We're trusted by top brands you likely know and trust. So these are some of the brands we've worked with. There are many more. Those are just a few of them. A lot of you may be familiar with some of our concessions products. That's a big part of what we do. We've worked on Super Mario Brothers, Trolls Band Together, Migration. There are several. So I just wanted to touch on that. That's likely how you have come to know the Ani Creative brand. For Five Nights at Freddy's, we worked on some pizza boxes with Universal. These were so well received by the cinemas as well as moviegoers. And we asked cinemas to replace their current pizza boxes with these and to come up with some fun, different types of pizza toppings and whatnot. So some specials. So we work again with studios and cinemas to help implement these types of promotions. Landmark Theaters, this year is their 50th anniversary. So we are helping them all year long with, we designed an anniversary landing page for them. We help them source merchandise and launch their merch store, as well as press and publicity, getting hits in Variety, Box Office, the LAS podcast, to name a few. And one thing for some of the independent and small to mid-sized theater chains that we really take pride in is really helping them with ideas. A lot of them are wearing lots of hats, right? The theater owners. So they're not only the operations manager or, the social media manager, they're doing a lot. So it can be a lot to try and come up with fun ways to drive traffic and gain ticket sales. So when the Taylor Swift and Beyonce concert tours came about, we did some reactive marketing and put our heads together internally. So if you receive some of our emails, you may get some content like this. So some of our blog posts of 10 ways to activate around Taylor Swift. We also provided, we were able to source friendship bracelets. So a lot of cinemas came on board to purchase those to offer them as gift with purchase or as freebies. So that's something we did for Taylor Swift. For Beyonce, if you're familiar with their tour, her fans are really big on the disco cowboy kind of theme. So we were able to source these cups and again, place them into cinemas. Bar promotions, I'm just going to kind of thumb through some of this. Digital menu boards and static clings are something else that we are able to produce for Ruby Gilman. And I mentioned where our focus is the small, independent, mid-sized theater chains, but that's not to say we don't work with some of the larger ones. So these are some campaigns we helped Cinemark with. They did 4 different limited edition ices, and we helped them produce the cups for their campaign, as well as Screen Vision and Paramount Plus. And then let me shift. I'm almost done here. So as I mentioned, we do art and production design, and we're really trying to bridge the two aspects of our business. So art and production design and cinemas, right? We're working on film across the board, but how do we bridge the gap between these two aspects? And we really are looking to do experiential design with cinemas. So working with the studios on a film, right? And then bringing some sort of immersive experience to cinemas. This is an example of something we did for the NFL draft. It is not, film related per se, but it's still in the entertainment space. So we took the Prime Video and Thursday Night Football film branding and helped come up with some concepts and some drawings, and then helped them with their media exhibit. So the rookies from the NFL, after they were selected to their teams, they went backstage and went on kind of a press car wash, if you will. So stopping by the Prime Video booth. And, this is something we helped with executing the construction. Not me, there was a team. I can do some light construction, but I'm not the one, there nailing and, putting the walls together. But again, this is something that we were looking to do for cinemas and kind of bring some excitement. It doesn't have to be as big as this, but just wanted to kind of show the scope of work that we do. So thank you so much for your time and attention. And I will kick it over. Nikisha's going to put, if you're not on our email list or haven't seen our website, not familiar with our brand, she's going to drop some information in the chat. Thank you so much. And Heather, last thing I wanted to say is I am on the board of Women in Exhibition. So I love this organization. It's very near and dear to my heart. And I look forward to continuing to work with you all. Thanks so much.
Yay. All right, everybody. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of information in case there's any new faces on here. How this works is I'll interview Mike. You're going to get to know him up close and personal. He'll take us on a journey about his professional and a little bit about his personal life. And then when I'm done with this part of the interview, we open it up to the audience. So please stay through the end. I'll call on you and you can ask Mike a question. You can embarrass him if you like, or you can just say hi, whatever you like. And then if you'd like just to put your contact in the chat, we'd love to get to know you a little bit. So welcome to Women in Exhibition, and there will be a board change in June, and excited to tell you guys about that. And just to give you guys a little heads up on upcoming speakers, we choose people like Mike to interview because they're interesting. And Mike was like, do you think I'm interesting? Of course we do, Mike. That's why I asked you. So we have our State of the Union in June. July, we have Joe Masher. I think he should be the mayor of the United States. We have Anne Elizabeth Crotty from Sony. We have Sasha Lloyd from A24, and we have Susan from Disney coming up the slate. So we've got good speakers. So without further ado, we're going to get to know Mike Polidorus from Paper Airplane. So Mike, let's take us on a little bit of a journey about where you grew up and a little bit about your education.
That's very, thank you, Heather. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for having me here. It really is very much an honor to be able to speak to you. And a lot of you we worked with over the years in various different fashions. So, it's a little embarrassing doing this. So please bear with me if I stumble through this. This isn't my usual shtick. But I'm probably a bit of a unicorn in the entertainment industry, especially in this part of it. I'm a Southern California boy, born and raised, grew up in the San Fernando Valley, in the East Valley, actually. I went to Cal State Northridge. My first gig was I worked in a movie theater. So when I was 17, my uncle was the manager of the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, which is just, Netflix has just redone it. I just told this story recently. So what had happened was my dad came home one night and said, that's my uncle, Jim needs a usher. You're going to work this Friday, because they had a really big movie that was opening up. And they were very concerned. And the Egyptian had 1,362 seats. It was, a mammoth single screen operation. And the big movie, for anyone who has seen it, starred two big stars, John Travolta and Lily Tomlin, and the movie was called Moment by Moment, right? No one's seen it. That was the biggest dog out there. There were 1,350 empty seats that weekend at the theater. So that was my, the beginning of my career. I worked with UA Theaters for 8 years after that. It was my job going through school. It was really great. I ended up managing theaters in Westwood and in Glendale. Westwood was the best. It was in the 80s when Westwood was the place to be. stories up the wazoo of different stars that would come in on a regular basis. And I did that job up until, through my college years, basically. And then after that, it was time, I guess, to go out and get a real job. So, that's kind of the background on how I got started in all this.
I love it. Well, Mikey, what are some of your pastimes and hobbies that you share outside of the industry?
It's funny because, I grew up loving the movie business. It just, and then when you start working in a movie theater, I think anyone on this call has worked in a movie theater, it gets into your blood. Two of my very best friends who are now outside of the business, I met the movie theater 45 years ago, and we are friends to this day. My hobbies outside, anyone who knows me are, I'm a huge hockey fan, which is an anomaly here in Southern California. You come into my house anytime, during hockey season, and you're like, why is Winnipeg and Calgary on your TV? Like, what is but everybody's got whatever it is that they like. Huge Springsteen fan as well. I think anybody who knows me knows that. Seen him over 50 times. It'll be number 53 coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to Cine Europe, and closing that at Cine Europe, Springsteen's playing Barcelona. So that's a bonus right there. So I'm very excited about that. But it's family time. It's the thing about what we do from a business standpoint, and this goes back to just the way certain people are wired, is I have a lot of interest outside of the business, but I'm also very interested in everything that goes on from an entertainment standpoint. And one of the things I've always done is I'm interested beyond just how it affects our little world, so to speak. And I kind of look at how does this affect something in the streaming market, and how does that affect something in the downstream market? So my interests are everything, I guess, is what it comes down to. So,
well, I know I see your pictures on Facebook. Your sports does shine through.
It's one of those things. Like, we enjoy, my daughter, who's 18 now, has become a big hockey fan with me. We get to share that, and it's fun. So, it's always good to have. And again, I always think it's always good to have interest outside of, the day-to-day business. And it's always, for me, it's been great having a couple of friends that are, two of my best friends who are not in the business. It kind of grounds you a little bit on that too. Yeah. You don't get sucked into just everything revolving around what's going on in our little world, because believe it or not, there's a world outside of that. So
there is a world outside. So Mike, when you look back and reflect as you've grown up over the years to where you're at now, is there a time in your life that you would consider pivotal, that if you had a chance to go back and talk to that Mike, what would that time be, and what would you say to that Mike?
It's funny. That's a really good question. And I think the pivotal point for anyone, and I guess there's a few pivotal points that show up in your career when you go along. And, there is as you're growing up and you're going through, I'm got big plans. I want to do this, or I want to do that. And then there's always that, how do you get started? Like, what's that first, thing that you get to do? And for me, it was a lot of stutter starts is what it would be. You'd have I left the movie theater, thought I was going to get a real job in the real world, worked for a friend who had a dental software company. And again, along the line, I always try to, whatever I'm doing, pick up something that can be useful down the road. Working in a movie theater, believe it or not, a lot of that stuff that I did when I was between 17 and 22, 23, it still comes into play. While things have changed and it's no longer 35 millimeter, and now you're looking at digital cinema, and it's kind of a different thing, it's still the operation of a movie theater is the same. And that is, there are, Thursday, Friday, Saturday are busy days in a movie theater. And from a marketing standpoint, if I think that we're going to get a one sheet, or we're going to get a standee built while they've got a lobby full of people, you're absolutely nuts. And that's something that, I can relay to, anyone who's worked in a theater. I can relate to the marketing people, and I can say, you may have these great aspirations that you're going to deliver something Friday and it's going to happen, but you know, they're busy popping popcorn, getting people in. That's the busiest time for them. You've got to be respectful of that. So you pick that up along the line. When I worked for my buddies at the computer software, you know what I learned there is don't be afraid of technology. The worst thing that can usually happen with a computer is you hit reboot and you're right back to where you need to be. And that was a very valuable lesson as well, because it enabled me to be very open to, you know, digital ideas. So when digital cinema came in, instead of kind of pushing back, I went in full force and said, like, I'm going to learn everything about this. I went in and decided, you know, I'm going to pick up, you know, what is a JPEG? What does that actually mean? What is a DCP? How does that actually work? You know, how do the keys work? How does, you know, how do, you know, when we went to satellite, how does that actually work? Because if I understand the process, I'm going to be that much better at being able to utilize the process efficiently and effectively. So when you talk about, you know, were there kind of, what I would say to young Mike would be, hang in there. You know, your first job may not be the one that's going to lead you where you need to go, but pick everything up along the way. I would also say to you know, anyone who's starting out, don't be, the allure of working for a big company, which is fantastic. You know, don't always let that be, you know, your best thing. My first gig, you know, outside of working for, you know, after I left working for the theaters and decided dental software wasn't for me because I wasn't, you know, talking to dentists about insurance claims and megabytes was not really
Didn't do it for
exciting to
you.
me.
Yeah.
So I decided, you know, I changed things up and I was like, okay, like, you know, I started working for a company called Scorus Pictures. I was a runner. Basically, I was driving around town, dropping off envelopes, you know, but I got to see how the operation worked. And I got to see how the people interacted and things that I liked or I didn't like about it. And, you know, it's funny, you know, and you run into people along the way that stick with you throughout your career. When I was working at the movie theater, two of my film buyers, one was Derek McClay, who now runs EDO, and another was Mike Doban, who's a partner at Galaxy Cinemas.
Galaxy,
Those two
exactly.
they were my film buyers. You know, Anne Elizabeth Crotty's dad was the head film buyer at UA at the time. You know, so you definitely, when I was at Scorus and I was the runner, Gail Blumenthal, who is the head of distribution at Roadside, was one of the salespeople over there. So you just don't know how it's all going to kind of come together, I guess, is what it is. And I would say, you know, and this is kind of a rambling answer, but you know, working at a smaller company, when I worked at Scorus, I eventually worked at, you know, where I really cut my teeth and learned how distribution works was Trimark Pictures. And Trimark, for anyone who doesn't remember, was the home of Leprechaun. That was our big claim to fame.
Okay.
You know, people always, you know, I got this question just recently, what are like the key moments in your career, like movies you're most proud of? And I've worked on a ton of movies. And in my office at Lionsgate, I had a Leprechaun poster hanging right next to the La La Land poster. And everybody's like, why would you have that? And I'm like, because that was, at the time, that was a major accomplishment for us. Like, we went out with this little movie and we proved that it could. And I learned a lot about how it all works at that point. So the rambling answer, Heather, is, you know, don't be afraid to work for a smaller company. And don't be afraid of the stumbles. I won't even call them failures. I'm going to call them, hey, look at that. I like it. Don't be afraid of stumbling along the way, because, you know, it may, you know, it took me 3 or 4 years or longer to probably, you know, get my footing to where I'm like, okay, you know, this might actually work out and I might not have to drive a bus for a living.
And I'm looking, as I make my notes, I'm like, hang in there, don't be afraid, and there is a pot of gold.
Yeah, I mean, look, and you got to like what you're doing is what it comes down to. Like, you know, I would say this to anybody. It's like, you know, if you're going to get into something like this, you have to love it. You really have to enjoy it. You have to embrace it. And, you know, if, you know, what another thing I would say to people too is don't be motivated necessarily. Look, everybody wants to make sure they're compensated, and, you know, I'm not, you know, and of course money's important, but, you know, don't necessarily take jobs just based on money. Like really think them through, because I've had a lot of people I know who have been, they might take a job for a wrong reason, and that ends up, not panning out down the road.
Right. Well, that kind of helps me with this next question about your career journey. You've kind of walked us a little bit, but how did you get to Paper Airplane? Like when you kind of worked for the cinemas, then you went to work for distribution. Give us a little bit of that background, then how it got to Paper Airplane.
I mean, it's really, look, I never thought that I was going to be an entrepreneur at the age of 58. Like that was not something that was definitely in the cards. I had, like I said, I'd worked for exhibition, worked for, after I worked in the home office at Mann Theaters after I was in the field, and had worked for the dental software company. And this is where kind of the stutter stops happened. So, got a job at Mann. That lasted about a year and a half, and then Mann was sold and they had a purge, and that was that. I ended up getting a job right after that at 20th Century Fox. I was working in their exhibitor relations department for a woman named Mary Barnum, if any of you guys remember her. It was right before Brandon came in. And that studio system wasn't for me. I was hired to be your assistant, and I'm a terrible assistant. I can't even be my own assistant. Like that was just, that was when I didn't even make it through the 90-day probation on that one, because it was not a good fit for me. And it really does leave you a little bit of soul searching, because that was, after you just had the Mann experience, you had that. And this goes back to where I'm like, I don't know if I'm really cut out for this thing. Because I had all my friends who I'd gone to school with had all given up on entertainment and were in something else that was somewhat stable. But I got the job at Trimark, which was fantastic. And the thing about Trimark was, Heather, you did everything. And this is where I'm going to give you the kind of the background of where Paper Airplane kind of was. The germ of Paper Airplane was born in like 1990 at Trimark Pictures. And we did everything. It was a small organization, very scrappy. We had some great people that worked there. And one of the movies we had, and again, you would do everything. I was hired in to do, in theater marketing. I think they were paying me $250 a week. And it was, no, I'm sorry. That one was $400 a week. That was I got a big raise. That was good.
All right.
And but you would do everything. And like, I remember one day I'm sitting there and they come in, and Tim Swain, who is the head of distribution, says to me, we bought a radio spot with this guy in New York. We need you to write the copy. So I have to write a 60-second radio spot. And they go, oh yeah, by the way, the guy's name is Howard Stern. And Stern he was not a national name at that point. So literally for this movie Whore with Teresa Russell, I wrote a 60-second radio spot that Howard read, because that's what they had me do. And it was, I mean, you're learning on the fly because there's nobody else to do it. And we had a movie, it was called Final Approach. And it was about James P. Seeking was in it. It was about a pilot who was hallucinating. It was an Air Force pilot who was hallucinating. And somehow we got a run at the Cinerama Dome. Bernie Hines had given us a run at the Dome, and Tim was wigging out. And Tim basically said, we have to make sure we have a big promotion, something big to promote this movie. So don't ask me why, but I come up with this idea, and I'm like, let's build the world's largest paper airplane, and we'll build it at the theater, or we'll have it at the theater on opening day. So literally we build this theater. We have the Museum of Flight. They did it. I think it was like $1,100 or something like that to build it. Tim wigged out. He didn't want to spend more than $700, but I got him to kick in the money. We built the world's largest paper airplane. The day we're supposed to truck it from the Museum of Flight in an open bed carrier to the theater, what happens? It's raining. This is like, for any of you that ever saw WKRP in Cincinnati, this was just like the turkey drop. It was, you've got reporters at the theater. The airplane is coming. It's coming any minute. Meanwhile, it's wrapped in tarp. It's going like 8 miles an hour down Wilshire Boulevard as they're trying to get it to the Cinerama Dome. Finally, the thing got there. It got a ton of press. The movie didn't do much, but the thing killed. And years later, when I'm at Lionsgate, I'm telling David Spitz all this, and he's laughing. He can't believe this whole thing. And the shorthand then became, for any big idea that we wanted to do, David would just say, just paper airplane it. That was the idea. So that was our
I
shorthand.
love that. Mike, that's
Big
great.
idea.
Yeah.
So that was the genesis of it. But then, how did it come to this? So obviously, I went from, Trimark to, I worked at Savoy Pictures for a year. Savoy, unfortunately was not a long-term play. That ended at about a year. I ended up working for Technicolor Entertainment Services for a year. And if you remember at that point, they were fulfilling like one sheets and trailers and stuff like that. And they needed somebody who had some industry experience to kind of explain to them what the studios were actually looking for. So I did that for a year. But again, picking up along the way, that was a great experience in, how the vendor world works and how, the minutia of dealing with the studio and the exhibitors work, which I had never had to deal with that. And then after that, Steve Rothenberg, who I worked with at Savoy, called. He was at a company called Live. And he said, look, we're starting a distribution company. Would you come in and do print control and exhibitor relations? So I'm doing operations and exhibitor relations. And at that point, exhibitor relations, for any of you who remember that, but all of you are way too young, except for Steve the Lizard Killer, who was with Mark and Brian at the time. But the exhibitor relations was, hi, it's Mike from Live. Can you play my trailer and put up my poster? That was it. That was the extent of, in theater marketing. There was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So I did that. Live Entertainment became Artisan Entertainment. And we had a little movie called The Blair Witch Project that, ended up doing, every time it looked like we were in trouble, we stumbled and something happened. And then in 2003, Artisan was acquired by Lionsgate. And at the time, Lionsgate acquired Artisan, it was not even a blip on the last page of Variety. It was such a nothing act, because you had two super small companies that, who had any idea that this thing would actually, evolve into something. And Lionsgate, it was the right mixture of personalities, of the right mixture of, content. Everything kind of came together. And, you guys kind of know the story from 2003. We ended up having, it was interesting though, because when it first came together, Lionsgate had spent every nickel just about to buy Artisan. There was not a lot of money left. And we were releasing these movies hoping for the best. We actually landed a movie called Open Water, which was actually a big, movie ended up grossing, I think, about $27 million. And that gave us some breathing room. And then we had a couple of little movies called Saw and a Tyler Perry movie, Diary of a Mad Black Woman. And all of a sudden, we had kind of some bookends that were able to make us work. So anyway, as you guys know, company grew. It was great. We got to grow with it. We ended up having Hunger Games, The Expendables, then we bought Summit. We had Twilight, Now You See Me, Wonder, La La Land, Knives Out, all of these movies you got to work on. So, but you were working on the biggest of the big and the smallest of the small. And through it all, in theater marketing was changing. And all of a sudden, our friends in exhibition were becoming real media outlets. Now they have, social followings. They have loyalty. They have ticket data information. Now, all of a sudden, they're real marketing avenues. We, because where we were coming from at Lionsgate, didn't necessarily have the budgets the big guys didn't necessarily have all the resources. We had to get very good at learning how all of that worked. And Will and I would always talk about, wow, there should be an agency that goes out here and works in this space. There's agencies that do everything. And we kicked that around for a while. And then in April of 20, there was some restructure. And literally, I'd been at the company 23 years and I'd survived various regime changes and everything like that. April of 20, all of a sudden, there's a new regime change and they're restructuring, and my time has come to an end. And at first, I would say for anyone who's gone through that, you realize, wow, that is, what am I going to do? Am I going to be eating beans out of a can? I haven't looked for a job since, 90, whatever it was. And I'm
Yeah.
like, on top of that, it's like, okay, I'm 58, what do I want to do? I was in a fortunate position where, if I had to retire, it would have been okay. I could have done that, done a little consulting, it would have been fine. But it was still kind of I want to do something else. And, there were a couple of companies that were kicking around going, you might be good for this, you might be good for that. But ultimately, in my mind, it was, I'd really like to give something on my own a go. And
Got
it
it.
becomes very, look, anyone who started their own business, and, it's daunting, especially like if you've worked for somebody your entire life, it's daunting because you've got to sit there and like all the things that happen in the background, the HR, the 401k, the insurance, all of that. I don't know. How do you put all that together? There's always a guy I call that makes that stuff happen. And we ended up deciding we were going to do it on our own. We got a company to kind of help us out at the beginning. And Velocity was very nice, and they were great partners at the beginning. And it was something that, in all honesty, we probably wouldn't have done on our own if we hadn't had the backing. And again, this was April of 20. And if you guys remember, April of 20, there was this little thing called a pandemic going on. And every movie theater in, the country and the world was closed. So nothing like starting a cinema marketing company when every theater is closed. Not sure I would recommend that to anybody, but we, look, we did it. We kind of knew what we wanted to do, what we thought was needed. One of our goals when we started was we didn't want to be, and somebody coined this term, and it's perfect, is we didn't want to be the interloper. We wanted to be the trusted partner. We wanted to be the person or the company that everybody looked at like exactly like we had always done. And we are the problem solvers, and anything we're bringing to market or that we're coming out with, there's a reason why. And we're not just trying to sell you something just to sell you something. And I think that strategy has paid off. And, I can tell you that the last 4 years of, what have been some of the most rewarding of my career, and not to diminish anything that I've done in the past or any of the other companies I've worked with or whatever it is, but this has been it's been a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun building something.
Oh, Mike, I love that so much to know this stuff. So out of curiosity, what's your leadership style now that you have to be a leader? What do you do to motivate your team?
My leadership style is been what it's always been. And that is, you put good people around you. And, I am not one of these people. I'm not worried about the people around me outshining me. As a matter of fact, I hope that the people around me outshine me. If that's the case, that's going to make me look better. So it's really, empowering the team to do what they've got to do, and just trying to stay out of the way and not screw it up.
I love it. Kristen says she's saying on behalf of Marcus, she wrote you a nice little note. So what do you think are some of the major challenges that we're dealing right now in exhibition, Mike?
Well, it's not just exhibition. I mean, obviously exhibition is the one that's feeling the crunch of it. It's no secret that, it's been a tough 4 or 5 years that we've run through. COVID shut everything down. Just as we're rebounding from COVID, then all of a sudden the writers and the actor strike shut everything down. And the problem with as the momentum shuts down, when you look at the actor strike, for instance, that was a twofold problem that happened. And number one was when the talent was no longer able to promote the films, that meant that those movies got pushed. So things like Dune or Drive Away Dolls, whatever it is, that all got pushed out, which really screwed up the schedule last year.
Right.
Those movies that got pushed, have now cycled through. We're now at the point where we're on the back end of the strike, where the productions had to stop. So,
Right.
say yes that you're going to greenlight a movie, that's basically 12 to 18 months from the time you say yes to the time it's going to end up, on your screen. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
the fact that these productions shut down completely stopped the product flow. And you're seeing it right now. And there's a reason why we have these gaps in the schedule. So the problem is, number one, it's content. And it's the fact that we're not having, you look at the box office right now, and again, I know all of my friends in exhibition, which many of you are right here, are looking at it like this is rough. And when you compare it year to year, it's really rough. But what I would say to that is, you need to take what I would call a portfolio approach on all of that. Meaning, it's a 52-week year, and if you look at when we get to the end of the year, when you get to the back end of this, we're stacked every week. There is just one gem after another when you come in here. You got movies like Wicked, like Mufasa, like Moana. There's a zillion more that are lined up back there. The back end of 24 is going to outshine the back end of 23. However, you're going to have a gap. There's no doubt about it. We're down 23% right now. We're going to pick, that gap's going to only grow a little bit this weekend. And then you have the whole, you're going to, that $1 billion between Barbie and Oppenheimer that, we're somehow going to have to deal with as we get there. This was the first year in 17 years that we didn't have a Marvel movie kicking off the summer. So it's unfair to sit there and compare Fall Guy to Avengers. Like, that's just not, the Fall Guy was never created to be that kind of movie. Fall Guy ends up where it does on the schedule just because of the production issues where it is. I think Fall Guy initially was meant to be like it was a spring release or something like that. I think when it was put in. And so it's unfair to judge these movies where they are. All of that is great. All of that doesn't change the problem that exhibition has right now, where it's content and, you got to pay the bills and, there's overhead, and these movies just aren't necessarily where you have on your projections. If we can get to the other side, I feel like, you look at 24, 25, 26, it's going to be great. I think exhibition has been doing a great job in upgrading the experience. Making it, you look at how well the PLFs are doing, the PLFs accounting for 44% of ticket sales last week. Those are big numbers when you look at that kind of stuff. That just shows you that audiences, while they are price sensitive, at the same time, they're also willing to pay a little bit more for that premium experience. And, I'm very bullish on the industry. I also believe the industry is going through a radical change right now. I believe that if there's a silver lining that came out of the pandemic, and anybody who's heard me go down this road, where I'm headed, and that is, we tried every distribution model known to man, and then some others. And at the end of the day, we all came back to the idea of, what?
I'm sorry, what's
theatrical exclusive will
you
actually
feel cold?
A theatrical release actually elevates the content long term. And that ultimately is great for the business. Also, the other thing that came to it was, a 90-day window, a 75-day window, it's not needed. We can do a 17-day window. We can do a 30-day window. We can do a 45-day window. As long as we're going to PVOD and we're not going to streaming where it's quote unquote free, we're in great shape with any of that stuff. So I feel like the industry, the bones of where we are, have come out of it in a really good way. I think we need the content to put through to be able to do it. And I also think, we need to continue making that experience something that, is very advantageous for, the consumer.
I love that. And so as far as PLFs, I mean, would you see any new technology that's coming out? Do you think it's revolutionary, and anything that's kind of come your way that you're two thumbs upping about?
I think, what we're seeing is the advent of, whether it's the IMAX, the Dolby Cinemas, the XDs, the Ultras, those really just kind of enhanced visions of that. I think, when you look at some of the other things that, audiences like, it's not for everybody, whether it's, what you did, Heather, with the MX4D, or, with D-Box, or with, Screen X. There is a place for all of that. And it's all very much, additive to what goes on. And again, not for everybody. So I think the more we do that, the better we are. I also think the other thing that, we're starting to see is that there are alternative content things that can be in a theater that have great value. Taylor Swift was,
Yeah.
the thing about Swift that I would say was what it showed to me. Well, I'll back up. There were a theme that went through last summer to me that showed what makes the theatrical experience better, so to speak, or different from what you can have at home. It's very communal. And when I'm talking about communal, it's like, take Taylor Swift, you can go Sound of Freedom, you can say Barbie, you can say Oppenheimer. Just using those as Five Nights at Freddy's is actually a great example too. And that is, these are events that people come to a theater and experience together. Five Nights at Freddy is probably one of my best examples. The critics absolutely just leveled that movie. But the movie got an A cinema score. And why did it get an A cinema score? Were they rating the movie? Were they rating the experience of going in there and enjoying it with their friends and having that communal experience? Probably a lot of the experience had to do with how that movie came out. So you can't get that at home. You're not going to see a Taylor Swift concert and with, an entire auditorium of a few hundred people singing along and dancing. You're not getting that in the living room. And these are things that are very unique to the to the theatrical experience. I use this all the time, and I would say there are several examples, obviously, of TV shows that have become movies. I will ask you, is there a movie you can think of, a movie franchise that is, a Harry Potter, a Twilight, that was launched, in a streaming way that had that kind of impact, that became a cultural phenomenon? Probably, there's one that I can think of, and I'm not going to give the answer. I'll let people kind of mull it around. But is there anything that started, in a streaming venue that ended up becoming a big theatrical, just a linchpin for the zeitgeist? And very, very, they do it with TV shows, Stranger Things, Gambit, Queen's Gambit, like that will happen. Does not happen with the, with the film franchises.
All right, so we're going to do one last question, then we're going to do our rapid fire, the 20 questions, which are fun. Okay, the last question is looking to the future. Like, what do you see and how do you contribute?
That's a really good question. So I feel that from a future standpoint, we need to do a better job of cultivating our audiences. And what I'd like to be able to say is, we can't just say we need to get people to come back. We actually need to expand. We are now, from our industry, is competing with we are competing with other industries, whether it's gaming, music, you name it, for people's time and attention. So what I would say is, what we're trying to do is figure ways to get more people. How do we increase the funnel? How do we expand the audience base? Because, we need to not just get the consumer to come back or come more times. We need to expand that. And, I feel that what we're doing at Paper Airplane is actually helping in that matter, because we're helping to really kind of shine the spotlight on the ways exhibitors can market to their consumers. They have so much data, so much information, and we're just scratching the surface on what we can do. But to me, it's really important that we grow our audience base.
I love it. Okay, ready for the fun questions? Ready?
Sure,
If you could take 3 people to dinner, dead or alive, who would you take?
All right, let's come back to that one.
Okay. What do you think is the most interesting thing about your personality?
I don't know if there's anything interesting about my personality. I would say, if anything, it's probably my curiosity. It doesn't matter who I meet. Always try to figure out, like, there's always an interesting story somebody's got, and I always want to hear what that is.
Okay. What's your favorite quote or mantra?
You know, my mantra probably is, you know, just because they say it can't be done doesn't mean it can't be done. You know, if they did, you know, I'm of the mind of, if everyone's saying, you know, you know, we're doing it just because we've always done it, then that's what you know, I'm like, then we should be doing it a different way.
Okay. If you could time travel, would you go backwards or forwards?
I'd probably go backwards. I think I'd want to, you know, I'm of the, I'd like to see what laid the groundwork to get us to where we are today.
Okay. What's your go-to comfort food?
Potato chips, without a doubt. Although I like
All right.
ice cream, but potato chips are definitely, it's bad for you. It's not good. My doctor's not happy with that.
Okay. What do you do to relax after your long day?
I do a lot of walking. I try to get in a long walk whenever possible. You know, if I'm doing it right, I'm probably doing 5 miles a day. And, you know, I can go in and run through emails and, you know, just kind of decompress that way.
Perfect. Okay. If you could master any skill, what would it be?
You know, I'd love to learn how to play a musical instrument. I've tried to do it a couple of times. I absolutely suck at it. Tried taking piano lessons. I'm not very good at it. So if I could, you know, that would be something that would be, I would find that to be enjoying.
It's funny. That's common what people say. Okay. What's the most adventurous experience you've ever had?
You know, you know, that's a good question, Heather. You know, from an adventure standpoint, you know, I mean, I think, like, you know, first time I went to New York City felt very damn adventurous to me. You know, I think I was like, again, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, and here I am on a subway. I'll never forget. Quick story, you know, I was there with who became my wife. We're looking at a map, and some guy says, "Hey, you really should go to Brooklyn Heights." Lisa's like, "Great, we should go there." And I'm like, "I think they're like sending us somewhere to, like, you know, get mugged or something." By the way, Brooklyn Heights, if you've never been there, you got to go. It's like right on the other side of the Brooklyn Bridge. Great view of the skyline.
Okay. So if you could swap jobs with anyone, who would it be?
No one. To be honest with you, somebody asked me the other day, like, you know, what would it take for you to go back to working at a studio? And I just kind of blank stared at him, because I'm like, I like this too much.
Okay. One of the questions is your favorite performance. I'm guessing it's Bruce Springsteen.
Yes. So the favorite performance was, I can tell you exactly when it was. It was on the Rising Tour in 2004. It was at the Meadowlands. You know, we went and saw Springsteen. Started raining like you wouldn't believe. No one left. If that was Southern California, the place would have been empty. Instead,
Right.
you know, we were soaked, rocking out to the boss. So that was great.
I love it. Okay. Favorite movie genre?
You know, you guys are going to laugh. You know, it depends. It depends. I'm a sucker for a good rom-com. Saw Anyone But You, and completely understand why that movie worked. It was fantastic. It was like this, you know, it's kind of this generation's My Best Friend's Wedding. But I also, you know, I'm a sucker for, you know, good action movies. Like, you know, Die Hard comes on, I'm not going to turn it off. Independence Day comes on, I'm not going to turn it off. You know, hey, look, if a Bob Hope, Bing Crosby movie comes on, I'm probably not turning it off. You know, I've seen It's a Wonderful Life. I can quote every line in the movie. So, you know, my favorite genre is what's ever on the screen, probably.
Gotcha. Okay. What's your favorite movie snack?
Oh, popcorn, without a doubt.
All right. Okay. Morning owl or late night?
A little of both, but probably more late night than morning.
Okay. So do you prefer phone calls, text, emails? How do you like to talk to someone?
All of the above. It really all depends. There are times when a phone call is very important, and, you know, that's something I always would say to the younger crew is pick up the phone and call them. You know, there are things that get lost in the translation in text, but, you know, text is very good when you need an immediate answer. And then when you're trying to do something that you're documenting, sometimes email is the way to go. So it really depends on the situation.
Have you ever pulled off a prank on someone?
Yes.
Will, just kidding.
No, I've never done that to Will. But yes, I've done a prank before, but I probably shouldn't say anything about it.
Okay. How many languages do you speak?
One and not so good.
That's so good. Okay. All right. When you're feeling angry or frustrated, what do you do?
Boy, that's another good question. I think when you're feeling angry or frustrated, you got to take a deep breath. I'll either take a walk, try to find something on TV to distract myself from, try to get, again, it goes back to what I said at the top, guys, and that is, I don't think it's healthy to always just be fixated on whatever's going on, work-wise. So what I always try to do, if I'm getting frustrated work-wise, I try to just find a way to think of something different.
Go for a walk. Okay, this is the last question. So if there was a movie about your life, Mike, who plays you?
There's never going to be a movie about my life. So
Come on.
We never have to. No one's going to care about that. So
can't think of anybody. Okay, so now we're going to start asking, working around the room. And since Angela is the first person on my little screen, Angela, would you like to say hi, or do you have a question for Mike?
Hello. I don't have a question, but I know I've been in the industry 40 years, so I recognize a lot of the companies you've been talking about. So
that's funny. Yeah, it's they come and they go, right?
yes, very fast.
Yes.
Well, thanks. It's nice to see you. So I'm just going to call on people randomly. Lauren Carter, do you have a question, or would you like to say hi to Mike? There she
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I just want to say how much I appreciated listening to you talk, Mike. Thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, no problem. I hope I didn't bore everybody.
is.
No, not at all.
All right, I'm going to keep going. Will, it's your turn. Come on, Will.
He's not paying attention.
Will, where is he at? We'll keep going. Tessa Eplin. There she is.
Hi there. So I have a question. You mentioned about enhancing the guest experience and with like IMAX, PLFs, but do you think there are ways for smaller theaters to achieve that who don't have those?
Yes, I absolutely do. So my wife actually owned a small movie theater up in Lake Arrowhead, California, the Blue Jays Cinema. And there was no way that we were going to be able to afford any of the PLF or those, or putting in loungers or anything like that. But what we were able to afford is making the experience as good as we could for the guest, given what we had, meaning making sure that we updated the candy stand, we put new flooring in. We just made it as comfortable and as fun experience as you can. I also think you can do things where it's, the theaters today are kind of like the town halls, the community centers, especially in smaller theater or in smaller communities. I think anything you can do to embrace that and make the theater like the linchpin of the community. Look, I know it's easy to say all these kind of buzzwords, and ultimately you got to roll up your sleeves and figure out how to do it. And every community is different on what to do. But the more you can get people coming to your theaters, and whether that means you're working with the Chamber of Commerce to have meetings there in off hours, or you're working with schools to come out there and have some kind of speaker series or something, but just getting people coming into your building and being familiar with it is a great start, I think, in just expanding that experience. Because so many people just, they don't think about going to the movie theaters again, and but once they go, they love it. And I think we need to do a better job of making sure they know they love it.
Thank you. Amanda Martin, would you like to say hi?
I would. Hey, Mike.
Hi, Amanda.
Hey, Heather. Love the Paper Airplane team. Shout out to Amanda R. Feel like I give her all my stuff last minute whenever I do an event with you guys. So I appreciate your patience. One thing that you said earlier on that you got from working at a technology company was don't be afraid of technology. And I love that. And I think we all can embrace that. So is there like any kind of outside the box technology that maybe exhibitors wouldn't think of that they can start to embrace to help with their business, or, help with advertising, anything like that?
Yeah,
Great
I
question.
mean, it's funny you bring that up because, obviously we've been talking quite a bit about this with your boss and everything like that.
Mhm.
And one of the things I think that's really key is that for the exhibitors, big and small, is like really getting in there and mining the data and being able to, not just send an email on a weekly basis like, hey, these are the movies that I have coming out, because, at some point it becomes noise and it's, I get this every week. But if you're curating what you're doing, you're communicating with your exhibitor or with your customer, they'll want to receive the message. And if you're sending them a message they want to receive, they're going to pay attention to it. And that's going to enable you to grow that audience and to have a bigger voice with them. And I think there are ways and there is technology out there that will enable you to do it. It's clunky, some of it sounds like it's harder to use. But I think the more you're able to kind of just like, all right, I'm going to deal, look, everybody has it. I get new software where I'm sitting there, I'm putting off using it. And I actually have an app I'm supposed to download now and I keep putting it off, but it's like, I got to do it. And yes, it's going to be a pain in the neck to get it loaded and everything. But once I start using it, I'm going to be like, why wasn't I using this before? So that's, I guess my thing would be, get over the hump of whatever that is and try to, go, okay, I'm going to embrace this and I'm going to learn it, and it's going to be painful at the beginning, but when I'm done, I'm going to be so much better for it.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, we got just a couple left. Melissa Boudreau, do you have a question or would you like to say hi to Mike?
Hello. Thank you so much for this talk, Mike. I think you should write a book because I was so interested in all of your stories. They were just so wonderful. So I just really appreciate you sharing them. I appreciate Paper Airplane so much. And I think it's so inspiring to hear what you did after Lionsgate and during the pandemic. So I really appreciate you and your team so much.
Well, thank you, Melissa. And really what I want to say about that too is that this goes back to the other question Heather asked. Paper Airplane doesn't exist unless you have great people around you, because I can't do this stuff, but you've got Amanda, you got Will, you got Maggie, you got Laura Beth, you got Nick. These guys, they know how to go in there and get the job done. And again, if I can just stay out of the way, I think we can, it gets done a lot better. And Amanda will vouch for that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get Alexander Pierce and then we'll end with Diane from Cine Show because she had a question. So Allie Pierce from NCM, would you like to say hi to Mike or have a question? She always has great questions.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much, Mike. This has been just such an awesome experience just to hear your words of wisdom. Like Heather said, I work for NCM, National Cinemedia, and my question for you is just from from our vendor perspective, what advice would you have for those of us folks who want to improve or deepen our relationship with the agencies and the film studios across the industry?
That's a good question. And I think one of the things I've seen now, having been on kind of both sides, is there are different ways that what I would say the marketplace partners, like NCM is definitely a marketplace partner in the ecosystem. Known Gellerman, Doug and I go years,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I love Doug.
He's great.
What I would say is there needs to be, like, some of the vendors in the marketplace, they do, they're constantly selling something is what it comes down to. And there becomes a bit of there's a fence that kind of builds that. Okay, what are you selling me now? What is that? I just feel like we should all be working together, and it should be whatever the offerings are that a vendor or whoever might have, there's got to be a reason for it. Like, I always say, it doesn't do you any good if you're like, what problem are you solving? Like, if you can't tell me what the problem is that you're solving with whatever you're bringing to market, then you shouldn't be bringing it to market, And, my favorite is there's a couple of guys out there and they pitch me and I'm like, you're solving a problem that doesn't exist. So I don't know what you're trying to do, Anyway, so.
I love it. Thank you.
Okay, so we got two questions. We're going to do Tanya, then last with Diane. So Tanya had a quick question. Go ahead, Tanya.
Hi, nice to meet you. I jumped in a little later, but I enjoyed that story of the paper airplane in the rain. And It's been really great hearing from you. Thank you. And I guess what I wanted to ask is if there has been a piece of advice that has been given to you or stuck with you throughout all of the changes and throughout your life where you kind of lean back on.
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's a lot of just tidbits you pick up along the way. I think there's I always think that, like, when you're working on a team, again, I always look at something and go, is this a team I want to be a part of? Like, not just a job, but is this a team that I want to go into battle with, so to speak? And sometimes you look at it and you're like, no, like, this is not necessarily, like, I don't necessarily have faith in this group to do whatever it is. So, especially as you're building a career, decisions you make early on definitely have ramifications. So, think it through. And, one of the things was, when I went to work for Trimark and I wasn't making very much money, and I had friends who had gone to college who were making, 3 times what I was making. And you're like, what did I do wrong? But at the end of the day, when you get to the finish line, you look back at that and you go, like, that was so long ago. And it was an eye blink at the time. And I'm much happier than a lot of those people are at this point. And I feel like, making those career decisions that are good for you, as opposed to what seems like they're good for the moment, if that makes sense. So.
That does. Thank you so much.
My bit of advice is, if you're having in a bad mood, don't cut your bangs. All right.
Your bangs look great.
Okay, Diane Pfeffer, we'll close out with her, and then I'll stay on till everybody says goodbye. So Diane, when she had one last question about anime.
Yes, I just first of all, you had me at Blair Witch. I remember that movie, Mike, so thanks so much. I didn't think about it till now, but it probably had huge impact on filmmakers, because it was a movie that was made with a camera, right? And with like a handheld camera.
Yep.
And I think it had a disclaimer, if I remember correctly.
We had to put a disclaimer, because
Yes.
the shaky cam was so bad, people were actually getting nauseous in theaters.
Yes, yes. I do remember that. Yeah. So anyway, it's good to look back as well. But looking forward, the question I put online was this whole immersive environment. I often think about anime, and I've gone to some anime events with my 20-year-old son, and I just love them, because it does show you things you can, like, kind of borrow and take into this world.
Well, I mean, anime is its own world upon itself. And again,
Right.
Something that I didn't even realize until we started Paper Airplane and we started working on some anime movies. And again, like anything else, all anime is not created equal. There are some properties that are huge and enormous, and then there are other properties that, you're like, nobody cares about. And again, me as a novice, I don't know. But it's interesting looking at it. But it goes back to that whole, there's so many different kinds of content we can be putting in theaters. CinemaCon did a great job of having, the Crunchyroll guys out on Monday to give or Tuesday, to give like a little background on how this anime works. You look at last year, and there was, The Boy and the Heron, which, came out and, was one of those movies that actually saved winter for everybody, because no one saw that one necessarily coming. So from an anime standpoint, it's something that, we as an industry, again, we need to embrace. And I guess one of the other things that happens is, exhibition tends to focus on those big titles, whether it's a Marvel title, a Star Wars title, a Mission Impossible. Let's be honest, for the most part, those movies kind of take care of themselves. Like, they have so much noise around them. It's the smaller movies that need to be cultivated, the anime titles, more of the mid-tier movies, those kind of things. That, to me, is where also we should step in a little bit and work a little harder. But to your point, anime just shows you, you know, we can put any kind of content on these screens, and there's people want to come and enjoy it in an immersive event. So.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Heather, for putting this together.
You're welcome.
And Gianni for sponsoring it. Okay.
You did good. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Mike Polidoros from Paper Airplane. Now that we know the story, it's great, and we will see you guys soon. Thanks for being the best part of We.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Heather. I hope I did okay with you.
You did great. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Gonna end it.
I'll talk to you
Bye.
later.
Okay.
Bye.